Well, hello and welcome to episode number 443 of the Plain Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos, and in this week's show we say a very special hello to the, or goodbye to the queen, last queen of the skies. Spit it out, Carlos, here we go. And BA staff get a social media ban, and an Airbus falls apart and keeps on flying. In the military news this week, we get a little tech update, and there's a renewed talk of F-16s going to the Ukraine. So, joining me this week, well, actually not joining me this week, as you would have probably have guessed, because I'm here in the studio on my own, is not Matt Smith. Unfortunately, Matt Smith is out on location with the radio station that is Park Radio. He's out with those guys tonight doing a live broadcast from a pub, of all places. What a hard life that man leads. But we have got someone joining us this week, and I'm going to bring the camera. Hopefully the camera will work here. I'm going to bring him on live here. And welcome back, our king of aviation. And hopefully this week he hasn't been to Vegas 600 times. It's Armando.
Well, we are missing Nev also, Carlos.
Oh, I haven't got to Nev yet.
Which means contractually I had to be here today. So I actually just landed. I wasn't sure I was going to be on the show today, but I spent the whole week in San Antonio, Texas, where it was a frigid 30-something degrees, and there's an ice storm happening. And I just got back literally about 30 minutes ago back home. So I am happy to be here today.
Well, thank you for joining. Because you've done some military stuff this week, though, haven't you, for us, Armando?
Just the usual stories. I don't think anything out of the ordinary. And, you know, I wanted to go down to San Antonio. I was at Lackland Air Force Base, bunch of beautiful airplanes. It's like basically a big air museum. And it was just so cold and rainy that I just said, I love the podcast, but I'm not going to walk around these airplanes.
You have rain in the US. I thought that it was always sunny in the US.
Okay. Terrible weather. This whole winter has been terrible weather here.
No. Well, the summertime will soon be here. Don't panic. And as Armando,
speaking of pubs,
speaking of guest hosts, Nev can't be with us this week as well because Nev is busy flying around Europe. I think he's literally just got off a plane somewhere and sent me a picture earlier of a lovely meal he had on board in seat 1A with a nice view as well that Nev had on the aircraft. So Nev can't be with us this week, unfortunately. But we have got back seems to be our resident super sub that we have on the show now, especially when it comes to anything to do with Airbus and how to fly an Airbus. Obviously, it's got to be the one, the only. It's Andy.
Oh, I'm back again. I spend a lot of time on this show these days. Thanks for having us, though. It's great. And yes, as Armando said, I am sat in my own pub, just like Matt is broadcasting from his.
So how are things with you, Andy? We've obviously when did we have you on last? Was it?
It was the beginning of Jan. It must have been about
must have been beginning
3 weeks, 4 weeks ago, something like that. Yeah, I'm still grounded. Still got the medical issue, but it is getting better. So hopefully I'll be back flying very soon. But thanks for having me again.
No, it's good to have you on. We've got a couple of stories which I know you've got some comments to make for this week on the show.
Yes.
So yeah, we've got more on that coming up later. But
it's really it's the only time I enjoy listening to the show is when Andy's on.
Oh, that's very kind, Amanda. What do you want? A check? PayPal? Something like that?
For that thing I was talking about for your pub.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, we're making airplane drug deals across the ocean here.
Shh! Don't tell them.
Oh, wait, it's not like we're live worldwide or anything.
Actually, for the benefit of those watching, and if you can just have a quick whiz round the pub so everyone can see, because they might not believe that you actually are. Look at this, guys. For those of you watching in the world of YouTube, Andy has actually got a traditional English pub.
I'm sure most of them have seen it before, but there we go. Spin it round, back.
It's very classy. This is the classiest pub in England right there.
It's très classy. Yes. That's French.
It is so good, honestly. Well done. We need to make a point of going over to see him, don't we, Armando, at some point. I think that's going to be worthy of a flight across from Charlotte over here to the UK, just to have an evening with Andy in the pub.
Shoot, that was the plan. I was supposed to come over in March, but man, plane tickets are just crazy expensive.
Yeah, silly money.
Yeah. We were going to bring the family over for spring break, our spring break, and visit with Matt and Andy and you guys up in, you know, the eastern part of England, and not even do any touristy things. We're just going to go visit friends for a week, but still waiting for those plane tickets to come down.
They'll get there. They'll get there.
Why they're so expensive now, I don't know. They thought they want to encourage people to get on the aircraft and fly. But anyway, we're going to say a special hello to everyone who's joined us in the live YouTube chat room this evening. I'm going to go through the list here. Start at the top. Captain Cruz was first in, according to YouTube this evening. Hello to you, Captain Cruz. We've got Mazus. Hello to you, Mazus, as well, our local listener, Mazus. Scrolling down, Yizap2. Hello, Yizap2. Good evening to you as well. New name in the chat room. Dirk S is also in there. Lee Davies has probably got a pint on the go. I know he's probably got a pint on the go. Who else have we got? Neville Bounds is in there. I don't know what he's doing there, but he's got his blue spanner of doom out ready. Alex, hello to you as well. Good to see you in there, Alex. And Andy Wilson, no idea who that guy is. Mash is also in there. Hello to you, Masha. Lovely to see you in there as well. Bill, hello to you as well, Bill. Sturman, hello to you, Sturman. Came past your workplace this afternoon and did beep the truck horn, but don't know if you heard me or not. Richard Adams. Pip is in there from the Plane Safety Podcast. Hello to you, Pip, as well. Scroll down, make sure I don't miss anyone out. John Jester, hello to you, John, our resident Queen of the Skies pilot. Got a story coming up in just a bit, all about that actually.
Hey there, don't just fly by our military loyal listeners, the people that acknowledge it openly in the chat room. So Jonathan Warner's in there, Sturman's in there, Lee's in there. So hey. Or you know what? Maybe we'll separate that section off, and when we get to the military section, I will just acknowledge the military fans. And here's in the military chat room.
Why not just split it into two separate podcasts?
Oh, you willing to put in the work?
Anyway,
moving swiftly on. So it's the beginning of the month, and it's time for to say thank you to everyone who donates very kindly to the show. And now we've not got the backing music to play because I can't find it on here. Don't know what Matt's done with it. You know, that's what happens when I'm in charge of the old system here. But Armando, if you'd like just to run through the Patreon and the PayPal donators for this month.
Yeah, all joking aside, we say this every show, every meetup, every time we have a special event, that this wouldn't happen without the support of our Patreon and our loyal listeners and everybody who downloads the shows. But our loyal Patreon supporters, going down through the list: Sam Dawson, Logan Lynch, Alex Robinson, Dirk S., Sasha Beer, Stephen Ivey, who I'm coordinating with for a special business aviation special. Nicholas Codling, Luis Caceres, Alan White, Stephen Howland, Tanya Wyman, Nicholas Hewitt, Masha, who doesn't love Masha, Ruben, Neil, Graham Haley, Jonathan Warner, Eric Graves, Jordan Rose, Andrew Wilson, Captain Jeff, the Royal Captain Jeff, Adam Spink, Liz Piper, Jeff Ward, Jenny Parkinson, Evan Shue, Stuart Baker, Ray Williams, and one Dr. Stephanie Plummer, my neighbor. And our traditional PayPal donators are Tony Stubbings, loyal fan of the show, Mazuz Karim, Richard Adams, and Craig Yarusko. I very, very much appreciate every single one of you listening in and contributing to the show. And thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Armando. So this week I was lucky enough to go to a certain part of the UK. I think for some of you guys, you probably saw this actually, didn't you, on the social media feed? So I can bring this up on the screen. Here we go. So this week I was in the truck and I got to go to London Heathrow. So as you can probably see on the screen there's the faithful truck parked. I managed to get parked right in front of Terminal 3 arrivals there at London Heathrow on Monday. And this was actually quite late. This is like 9:30 in the evening, so there wasn't much going on there. And there we go. That's behind me is where the Virgin Atlantic building is with the Virgin Atlantic logo on. You can see the truck there with I'll point out that I've got a light missing off the front there. I need to replace that next week. That's another job for me to do. But yeah, I had a really good trip to London Heathrow. I've got to say, guys, it was really weird being at Heathrow and not being the one who's going on holiday. I'm not going to lie, it was quite strange.
Oh, welcome to our world. We go to the airport all the time and don't go on holiday.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, because we're clocking in.
You get to see all these glamorous locations every time you're flying, honestly.
Yeah, we turn around and come back.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, we see them on final approach as you glance over the left, the left side or the right side, but then you're worried about not taking out some runway lights, right?
Right. Anyway, we must move on with this show, otherwise we'll get shot here. We'll have John after us. So, time for some commercial news. If everyone is ready, I'll hit the button.
Send it.
Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts.
So the first news story this week comes to us from Reuters.com, ITV.com, SkyNews.com and Travel Weekly. And this week, it's not been a great week for two airlines, because two airlines have collapsed within days of each other. Flybe obviously went into administration less than a year after returning to the skies following a previous collapse. Flybe operated scheduled services from Belfast, Birmingham, Heathrow to airports across the UK to Amsterdam and Geneva. 277 of Flybe's 321 staff have been made redundant. The remaining 44 have been retained, and Flybe had previously been pushed into administration in March 2020 with the loss of 2,400 jobs as the COVID-19 pandemic battered large parts of the travel market. Its business and assets were purchased back in 2021 by the Time OpCo, which is linked to US hedge fund Cyrus Capital. Time OpCo was renamed Flybe Limited, based at Birmingham Airport. Other carriers have already started to pick up some of the routes that were operated by Flybe, Aer Lingus being one of them, operated by Emerald Airlines, which will take over the Belfast City to Newcastle and East Midlands routes. The only two routes out of Belfast that Flybe held a monopoly on. Emerald Airlines at Belfast City Airport is holding open interviews for former Flybe workers to be have been adversely impacted by the firm's collapse. Interviews for roles including direct entry captains, co-pilots and cabin crew will take place Thursday the 2nd and Friday the 3rd, which was today, at the Hope Maldron Hotel in Belfast. Hopefully lots of people got their jobs. Ryanair and EasyJet have also said that recruitment is open for those affected. Elsewhere, a second airline folded just days after Flybe fell into administration. More than 400 staff face losing their jobs due to the collapse of the Norwegian low-cost carrier Flyer, or Flyr, F-L-Y-R. The company had tried and failed in recent days to secure a 330 million Norwegian crown, or $33 million of funding, Reuters reported. The Oslo-based airline, launched less than 2 years ago, confirmed it will be filing for bankruptcy on Wednesday after failing to raise fresh capital. A notice on the company's website said Flyer was unsuccessful with the new financial plan, and the board concluded on Tuesday evening that there are no alternatives for further operation. The company filed for bankruptcy on Wednesday morning, and Flyer has now ceased trading. All flights are cancelled as well and will not be rescheduled. Flyer operated a fleet of 12 737s to a range of European destinations, but had to cut back services during the winter in its final operation, and had only one flight scheduled between the Norwegian capital and Gran Canaria. So, remember you said, Andy, earlier about this, that you're not surprised that this has happened?
Well, certainly not in the case of Flybe. It's very sad, of course, anytime a company goes in administration, because, of course, there's jobs that have been lost. Thankfully, the market is very buoyant at the moment, especially for cabin crew to be rehired. It's great that Emerald are looking for the crew as well, because it'll keep them in the base that they were in as well, so near to home, people don't have to move around. But when Flybe version 1 went bust, the likes of Loganair took up loads of the routes, the profitable ones especially. And our EasyJet was operating sort of Manchester, Aberdeen, Inverness, stuff like that as well. So there wasn't really the market for the extra capacity, unfortunately. So it's very sad that's happened. And Flyer as well, again, an airline I didn't really know a lot about until a few days ago. But you can actually see some of their aircraft in Norwich now, Carlos. That's where a few of them have been flown to today, back to the Lesser.
Oh, I'll have to have a look up there, because the NDR that runs round the airport, the main road that was built a few years ago, runs right alongside the runway, so it gives you good access and views to the aircraft there. But I'll have a look, Andy, next time I go that way.
Yeah, but again, it's always sad when an airline folds, and it's just really unfortunate that Flybe just couldn't make it work a second time.
I have a question on Emerald. Is that here in the U.S., the regional is being operated either by a wholly owned or just a partner airline like PSA, Piedmont, Air Wisconsin, something like that? But you don't really hear about it too much over there in Europe. So Emerald is its own airline that is partnered with and flies under the flag of Aer Lingus?
Yes, I believe so. So they're sort of subcontracted in to operate the flights.
Is that common over there, or do most carriers just go for a small Airbus or 737 and just kind of run those on regional routes? I know the geography, right?
Yeah, you don't really get the sort of same setup that you have in America, where you've got the sort of the regional airlines and that feeding into the main legacy carriers. So no, it's a bit of an unusual one, really.
That's the first time I'd really heard of an Emerald Airlines type operation partnering with a larger airline.
Well, Aer Lingus have had this before with Air Aran, which then became Stobart Air, and then Stobart went bust. So then Emerald took up the slack for them as well. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And I mean, they only fly, I think Emerald fly ATRs as well.
Yeah, I looked it up super quick, and it was 14 ATRs, ATR 72s or something like that.
Most of them are painted up in Aer Lingus colours as well.
It's a shame, because Flybe did used to fly at one point from Norwich, but I remember the prices of the flights were quite expensive at the time, so I never flew with Flybe, unfortunately. But they did have some decent fares, I think, going to other parts of the UK or flying out of other parts of the UK. But no, I never got the chance to fly with Flybe.
I remember I flew Flybe from Norwich to Paris a couple times, and I thought it was a very affordable and good product, and it was so nice, from Bury St Edmunds, where I live, to just pop up to Norwich and not have to go into London. And I mean, two-gate airport, and you're right on the airplane, and an hour later you're in Paris.
Well, in the UK, many years ago, there used to be lots and lots of regional airlines. I don't know if you remember, Carlos, like Gillair. They were based out of Newcastle. They used to fly everywhere. Then you had Air UK as well.
Air UK.
Did a lot of regional stuff. There was Bryman.
Bryman,
yeah. Which ended up... A lot of them got absorbed into BA in the end, and Gill went bust after September 11th. There was Southwest, Air Southwest as well, which had the call sign of WOW before WOW Air had it. There used to be a lot, but unfortunately the market's disappeared now.
It's a shame. Need some competition back. Some small airlines back. Anyway, moving swiftly on. We've got lots to squeeze in today. Armando, you've got the next story, and this is all about... Well, actually, Sturman in the chat room sent me the link to the live video of this, and I actually did watch the last 10-15 minutes of this when it was on the YouTube page.
Yeah, I think we all shed a tear this week. And Andy, I think you may have been on the show, a previous show when we talked about the last Boeing 747 being constructed. But here it is. So from Flight Global, and it was all over the news, even here in the U.S. But the final Boeing 747 to be built left the Boeing plant in Everett, Washington on the 1st of February, closing the 5 decades manufacturing for Boeing. This aircraft with the registration November 863 Gulf Tango, might look familiar, #Giant, which was delivered to cargo carrier Atlas Air Worldwide on 31st of January, left its parking position precisely at 7:47 local time, and received the water cannon salute as it taxied to runway 16 right at Payne Field, just north of Seattle. It did lift off about 8:19 local time, headed southeast for the Atlas hub of Cincinnati. And before it left Seattle, however, it performed one final flyby over the factory, which has produced 1,574 747 since 1969. But while the events of the past 2 days or past couple of days marked the end of a long and successful chapter in Boeing's history, the youngest 747 airframe, this one, will likely fly for the next 40 years, according to Atlas Air Chief Executive Officer John Dietrich. Atlas was the customer for the final airframes that Boeing produced. He did say that there's no specific replacement for the 747-8, and that's why they're so excited to take take possession of the last 4 aircraft. Now, as a last tribute to Boeing and the iconic aircraft that was, of course, known as the Queen of the Skies, Atlas ended up flying a special flight plan. Carlos, I think you've got a picture of this. It was in the shape of a crown. This was the waypoint and looked great on FlightAware. I saw this all over social media in the shape of a crown with the number 747 as it traveled from the West Coast over to Cincinnati. Now, this aircraft is destined for Apex Logistics, which is a subsidiary of Swiss freight company Kuehne and Nagel. And on the 31st, about 9,000 guests and dignitaries, including 50 retired Boeing employees who actually developed and constructed the very first aircraft, celebrated the type in a hangar space where much of the 747's history actually took place. Actor John Travolta, who, as we all know, is a pilot, and he is type rated on the 747. He was on hand for the event and called the jumbo jet the most well thought out and safest aircraft ever built. Now, about 350 of the previous variant 747s, the 747-400, remain in service today, most of which are freighters. Only 29 of those aircraft, operated by just a handful of carriers, are really configured for passenger operations, according to some Cirium Fleets data. But the demand for the freighter version, as we've talked about on the show plenty, this 747-8F is remained pretty robust thanks to the 747's unique cargo handling capabilities. Some of them have that flip up nose, and of course it's got a range of 4,300 miles and 133 tons of payload capacity, according to Boeing. We know the history of the 747. It's been all over the world, literally one of the most iconic aircraft, and we thankfully will see it for the next 40 to 50 years flying. But it is just a little bit of a sad day, and we all shed a tear when the last one rolled out of the factory.
Yeah, I count myself lucky, Armando. I did eventually get to fly on a 747, or that was later on in my flying on aircraft type of experiences that I've had since I was young. But it was a Virgin 747 that I flew to Las Vegas on, and then obviously a few years ago I got to fly on the BA 747 with Nev back from Dubai, which was, as we didn't know then, was the last time that we'd ever get to fly on a 747 with BA.
Yeah, the only times I ever flew a 747 on a 747 was on BA coming back from London to the US.
I was going to say, what about you, Andy? Have you?
Yeah, I've flown on a 400 a couple of times across the Atlantic. I've flown on a 200 on only a 2-hour flight. That was an interesting experience. That was a charter job, a special charter.
Ooh.
I can't remember if I said last time I was on the show, I used to do various bits of instruction on the 400 and the 200 sim and the SP sim as well, which is a 200 just with adjusted flaps, because that had single piece flaps instead of slotted flaps. Brilliant aeroplane. I've never flown the real thing. The simulator flew like a dream, both the 400 and the classic. And it's a shame that it's going. I mean, when you look at only 1,500 built compared to like the 7.3, the 7.2, or the A320, it's not a lot, really, is it? But it's got a special place in a lot of people's hearts.
Yeah, I say it every time. I've known John Jester for such a long time, and he gets to fly this on a daily basis, and he says it's just everything you're saying. It just flies like a dream and loves flying it, and I love seeing all his world travels in the 747. And of course, Micah keeping me straight in the chat room there for the military. This means that as soon as these new Air Force Ones roll out, the VC-25, there's no replacement for it. They can only work on the old ones. That's a very good point from Micah in the chat room.
So Andy,
unless they replace it with an Airbus.
I was to say, Andy, you're not upset the fact that the 747 will probably outlive the 380.
Oh, do you know what? It's just an aeroplane. It doesn't matter. As long as it does the job it was designed to do, great.
Oh, dear. I had to get that one in there. Sorry. Moving on to the next story. And this next one, Andy, I'm really looking forward to your comments on this story.
Yeah, well, there's a few nameplates in here I'm going to struggle with, so I'm probably going to abbreviate it. But a CAA Airbus A320, so that stands for Compagnie Africaine Aviation, registered 9 Sierra Alpha Bravo Mike, performing a flight from Mabuji Maya to Kinshasa Ndili in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Departed Mujabi's runway 34 with most of the left-hand elevator separated from the aircraft. The aircraft climbed out and the captain decided to continue the flight to Kinshasa, requesting only right-hand turns. He climbed to flight level 300 en route, performed a low pass to have the aircraft assessed from the ground, and subsequently, again using right-hand turns only, positioned for another approach and landed on runway 24 about 90 minutes after departure. The separated part of the elevator was recovered from the departure aerodrome, and according to local sources, there was no collision or abnormal contact of the aircraft. It just looked like a structural failure as a result of fatigue. Now, the aircraft is not particularly old. It was delivered originally in 2009 to Go Air, then stored for a while before it was delivered to CAA. And the MSN's 3900, so it's not particularly old, powered by 2 CFM 56 engines. So yeah, you can see the photos there. Very interesting. A huge chunk of that elevator is missing. So what are your thoughts, Carlos?
Well, I think I said to you, I'm just going to pop the next pitch up on the screen. I think I said to you, Andy, when we were chatting the other day, let me just pop this one up there for those of you watching in YouTube. Well, there's the piece. I was just shocked that a piece of quite an important part of the aircraft has come off, yet the pilot decided to, yeah, that's fine, I'll just carry on. And they literally carried on for the rest of the flight, which was an hour and a half long. And it was quite a few miles, quite a distance to travel with that degree of part missing. I mean, what would have been the implications for, flight control characteristics and stuff with this piece missing off the aircraft?
Well, firstly, let's think about what the pilots would experience up the front. So, would they get any particular warnings to say that, hey, you've lost part of your elevator? Well, no, because it looks like it's come off from behind, so from aft of the hinge. So there's been no loss of connection for the hydraulics and actuator to the hinge system. So there'll be no loss of pressure in the hydraulics. He might have initially thought that this was a roll issue if he could only turn in one direction. There's a lot of information missing here. For any form of real flight control issue, and if you want to add to that hydraulics, that immediately says to me, you need long runways, and the departure runway was not particularly long. Again, I don't know if there was anywhere more suitable between departure and destination for them to try and land. And again, I've looked through the manual since you sent me this the other day. For this sort of failure, you can get an elevator servo fault or an ELAC or a SEC fault, which might give you a little bit of info. But again, if the hinge isn't missing and you pull back on the stick, it's going to show on the flight control page that elevator has gone up or down in either direction. So it's really tricky. I think there's a lot of information missing here. And this captain may have decided that, well, I can still fly it. It might have been okay in left, but it felt better in right-hand turns. So let's try and get it somewhere where now I've got a long runway. Might have better fire services, better rescue cover. But I don't know. That's just all the thoughts that have gone through my head. What do you think, Armando?
Well, here's a question for you. Would you have done a flyby? I don't know that would be my first go-to.
A flyby to me is very subjective, and Also, the people in the tower can only tell you what they see, and you're going past even fully configured 140 knots. You're not really getting a lot of time to look at anything or decide anything. I think a flyby would be useful to go, have I got all of my wheels? Yes. Okay, great, I'll try and land. But for bits missing off an elevator, which looks massive on the ground, but up in the air, might not look like much. No, I wouldn't have bothered, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't.
I'd have just wanted to make sure I'd done some form of calculation. Have I got enough runway to land on? Is this controllable in a landing configuration, which I'd have tried at altitude in case it stalled? Yes, I can still fly. Right, let's try and get it on the ground.
When I was down at Delta, we had a good discussion about this, and I believe so. I'm not a Delta employee. I just attended some training down there. They do not. The whole doing the flyby thing by the tower is not it's not a trained maneuver. Therefore, It's not an accepted maneuver. It actually just adds risk to any situation, especially when you have some kind of controllability issue or debatable controllability issue, which we knew the pilots knew because the right hand turns only. Additionally, a question for you, Andy, is the entire tailplane, when you adjust the trim, does the whole tailplane move, or does the Airbus?
It's trimmable, stabilizer, the whole thing moves.
Okay, so I mean, total layman here, but you could trim it out.
It would trim itself.
Neutral state, yeah. It
would trim itself. So you set the attitude that you want, let go of it, and it will trim it itself. And if it couldn't detect a fault here, then it would just carry on as normal. Unless it detected a fault in any part of the stabilizer, and it gave you a stab jam, then it will carry on normally, in normal law, to trim itself.
Yeah. So the airplane sounds like it would have been pretty controllable.
Yeah.
For landing. I'm with you. I would have just picked the longest runway possible and not done a flyby and just kind of put it back on the ground.
Just check everything at landing speed, that you can still fly it at a decent altitude, so that you don't have to. Obviously, you run the calculation. We've got computer software that does it now. You don't have to go peeling through the QRH anymore to find the numbers and interpolate and add a little bit extra on it. Tells you exactly what you need to know. Make sure it's controllable and just land it. Get it on the ground, then worry about it.
There we go. Piloting one-on-one with Andy.
Simple. You can join me next week for my course on flying it without wheels. There you go.
That'll be next week's story we have on the show, I expect.
Yeah.
But no, it's good to hear your feedback on that, because I was interested to see what.
I do think there's a lot missing from this still, because it's a very short synopsis of the story, and it'll be very interesting to see what comes back from the FDRs, because there'll be a lot of Airbus. The data points are just phenomenal, how many parts it actually records, so it'll be very interesting to see what comes from it. And the BEA will be involved, because it's obviously French built, and they're quite good at producing reports.
It's funny that we say that after so many incidents, so many mishaps. We say, well, let's see what happens with this, and let's see what comes out of the report. And I feel like we never see a follow-up. Yeah. I think that the news cycle is so fast, even in aviation or within aviation, that some of these things, until a year later, you say, oh, yeah, that ATR mishap that happened in Indonesia or something like that. I just saw something like that. But very rarely do we actually see some feedback, don't we?
That's very true, unless you go looking for it.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, if they want to have a place to put that part of the aircraft, I've got a piece of wall left back at home in the home studio. That'd look quite good, I suppose, on the ceiling. Anyway, perhaps not. Probably end in divorce if I'd done that. Next story is coming to us from traveller.com, and good news, guys, if you're going to travel in premium economy with AirAsia X. Now, I've not flown with AirAsia X, but if you're going to fly with AirAsia X, it might be worth you flying in premium economy, because AirAsia X's premium seats are now what used to be the business class seats on many other airlines. Arranged in a 222 configuration, they're quite roomy, with 60 inches of pitch, 20 inches of width. The kicker is, however, that they also convert to a lie flat bed. Yes, you heard me correctly, premium economy with a lie flat bed. It's not quite the level of comfort you'd get in business class suite, the full service airlines now offer, but typically with direct aisle access, the seat is not entirely flat, but on a slight downward angle. But for a budget airline, it's as good as a seat gets. Baggage, if you're flying on premium, you'll get a generous 40 kilos of baggage with these guys. I'm going to grab the pictures here for those of you watching in YouTube world. You'll be able to see these here. I'm going to put these on here. There we go. You'll be able to get 40 kilos of hand luggage, 40 kilos of check-in baggage. Sorry, hand luggage is still limited to one bag of up to 7 kilos in weight for that one. Entertainment, it's bring your own entertainment. So if you're flying on AirAsia X in this premium economy, you will have to bring your own entertainment. There'll be no streaming Wi-Fi at all, so you just got to bring your own tablet, unfortunately, for this one. Service-wise, staff are polite, efficient. Before takeoff, premium lie flat passengers get asked what time they'd like their meals. The call button is answered immediately when asked for a snack on the flight. You can buy yourself some Pringles or whatever you may desire on board the flight. Drinks as well, you get pre-flight drinks and also beer before takeoff as well, you're entitled to as well. Food, you get a meal and a drink is included with the flight. A bottle of water is also included in the armrest. You can pre-order your meal, chicken teriyaki with rice, always a good one that is. Presentation's not that fancy, it's a plastic dish, but the meal itself, apparently according to this story, is absolutely delicious. Additional meals cost you $10. Given the meal's a bit on the small side, you might want to buy yourself 2 of those. One more thing, AirAsia X is new to the Australian market after an ill-fated Brisbane-Bangkok route was launched shortly before the pandemic hit, but it has plans to grow provider demand is there. If it happens, expect the 3 times a week flights fall from Sydney to move to daily flights, and also a return to Brisbane as well, and possibly flights from Perth. So what do you reckon, guys? Lie flat seats in premium economy.
Sounds good.
I'm in.
Are these aircraft that they've taken over from somebody else and it's got like business class seats in, but they don't run a business class operation, or is it something like
Quite
that?
Possibly, yeah. In a 222 configuration.
That's a great way to brand it. They're like, we got rid of first class. We just have premium economy.
But it's great. I think that's really nice.
It's good.
Hope it works for them.
Yeah. So, Armando, you've got the next story, and it's, I thought I'd give this one to you because, it's a mishap with a Cessna.
Yeah, taking it back to all our general aviation days. This is also from Flight Global. Cape Air Cessna 402 was involved in a runway mishap on the 27th of January at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport after the aircraft's nose landing gear failed. The incident didn't cause any injuries, but it did force the closure of Chicago's runway 9 center and 27 center, according to a NOTAM. Oh, hey, somebody read them. Well, I guess Flight Global read a NOTAM. The FAA said that the nose gear collapse of Cape Air Flight 1, a twin-engine Cessna 402 collapsed while landing on runway 27 right at, that's interesting. It was on 27 right, but they closed 27 center at Chicago O'Hare. 6 people were on board. The aircraft had been operating a flight from Manistee in Michigan to Chicago, according to Cape Air. Cape Air is a small airline, Part 135 operator out of Hyannis, Massachusetts. They did say that there were no abnormalities prior to the mishap or prior to the landing. There were no injuries. All passengers and crew were safely transported to the terminal. Now, few details are known about the event, but there were some images that were published on local media that showing the aircraft registration November 466 Charlie Alpha with its nose resting on the ground. Cessna has been manufacturing the 402, this version, since 1981, but I think it started in 1967, something like that. It's just under 2,000 of them between the 402 and the 401. Cape Air specifically has about 70 of these Cessna 402s, which it operates on short routes across the U.S. From several U.S. cities, including Boston Logan, which is actually home to the operator's largest hub. Now, the airline, and we did talk about this on the show also, has started replacing its 402s with the new Tecnam P2012, P2012 Travelers. It's a twin-engine piston. They have about 30 of those in service, and I'm not here to pick on them, but I've heard from a lot of sources in this scheduled Part 135 world that those Tecnams are actually a little more maintenance intensive than Cape Air was originally planning on them being. And, the Cessna 402, while it's a little bit long in the tooth, it is a reliable platform that's just been going for years and years and years. So, Cape Air does a lot of essential air service. I know I was on an airline that directly competed with Cape Air, and a lot of times we would see each other on the ramp. We were always parked next to each other. You see the same pilots day in, day out, and you just kind of looked over at each other and just until you both sat down at the airport McDonald's. And then everybody just has that Part 135 survivor patch on their white shirts.
The main thing is no one was injured, apart from the aircraft.
Yeah, from a safety standpoint, pretty big nothing burger, as I like to say. A nose gear collapse on a Cessna 400 series, that probably happens more often than you think.
There's more of them than 747s built.
Yeah. There's 2,000, so about 500 more. So,
yeah.
And the 310, the Cessna 310, is terrible with its nose gear, or actually its entire landing gear system. The Cessna 210, what did I say? The 210 is terrible. The 310 is also known to have a lot of landing gear issues. So
I've got a soft spot for the 310. I don't know why. I just like it.
So, point to make: if you're thinking of buying one of these guys and girls out there in the world of P2K land, don't buy one. Stick to a 150, stick to a 150 or 172.
You can't get 10 people on it though.
Yeah. There's nothing right, like the competitor to 402 is probably a Navajo, maybe a Beech 99, something like that. Piper Navajo Beech 99. That's about the same size aircraft, but Cessna's always had a corner in that market. So
yeah, probably
go for, I don't know, maybe $150,000, $200,000 for an old 402 that you could fly around your family in.
There you go, Carlos. Get yourself one.
Yeah, I'll run that by the boss.
Speaking of divorce,
literally run it by the boss. Yeah, I'm still deciding where to put that RB211 blade on the wall at the moment. We're just deciding what part of the office wall I'm going to hang it on, because it's got to be a fairly structurally sound part of the wall, which I put that blade on the shelf, because it is a weighty piece of titanium. Definitely.
Yeah. John Jester in the chat room says that Cape Air is actually the go-to company for maintaining the Cessna 402, and that both Cessna and the FAA go to Cape Air for their questions.
They are the experts then.
Yeah. Cape Air has been around. Do you remember the show Wings? Sandpiper Air had I think the Hackett brothers or something like that. It was an old sitcom from the early 90s, I think. I think that was kind of all loosely based on Cape Air, and the airplane in the Wings opening sequence is still flying for Cape Air today. That is some really deep av geek, like catacombs of av geekedness.
Oh, I'm impressed.
Anyway, so Carlos, I think you've got the next one, which is
me.
Andy's got the next one, and actually this story, I suppose, Armando, would apply to you quite heavily, because you've got obviously a couple of pooches. Andy, have you got dogs as well or not?
I've had dogs in the past, and I'm looking to get another one. But yes,
the story's for you then.
Yeah, so here we go then. Pampered pooches on UK's first private jets for pets. Airline prepare for takeoff. Well, there's a lot of P's in there, wasn't there? The UK's first private jet company for pets has been flooded with requests ahead of its launch later this month. Although tickets for the first, of course, K9 Jets flights don't even go on sale until the end of February, 2,200 people have already registered their interest in the service. Owners and their pets will clamber aboard a luxury Gulfstream jet that seats no more than 10 passengers with their pets and take off on routes between the east coast of the US, London, Paris, and Lisbon. Tickets start at £7,100, which includes space for one human and their pet, as well as private terminal fees, luggage, and all taxes. I'll say that again, £7,100 for a person and a pet. While the service will mostly cater for the cats and dogs market, creatures including parrots and rabbits are welcomed so long as all of their paperwork is in order. K9 Jets was founded by a Birmingham-based executive assistant Kirsty and pilot Adam Golder, who currently run more traditional private jet firm G6 Aviation, which generally caters for high net worth families, music moguls, footballers, and royal families. They spotted a gap in the market in 2022 amid a surge in demand from pet owners relocating from the UK to the US and vice versa, who were terrified of condemning their mutts and muggies to commercial aircraft. Anne Baines, who does PR for K9 Jets, explained to the Mirror how the system works. The passengers form a group and share the cost of a private charter where dogs can sit by their owner's lap or snooze by their feet, rather than subjecting their beloved pets to cargo in a commercial aircraft, she said. Chartering a private jet is a luxury service. However, with the opportunity to purchase a seat rather than a whole jet, it makes it more in reach for those who want to travel or relocate across the Atlantic. People are also working more flexibly in a remote manner, which means it's easier to work from home in a different country, opening up new experiences for home working. The price tag of moving a pet abroad varies hugely depending on the means of transport and the destination country, but it typically costs several thousands of pounds to make a UK to US move. Madison and James Miller recently found the emotional toll was much higher than this when their dog Bluebell ended up in Saudi Arabia, I shouldn't laugh, rather than the US, following a British Airways mix-up. I mean, that is a big mix-up. Anna says that some pet owners aren't willing to fly commercial and aren't able to book a place on the pet-friendly cruise liner like the Queen Mary 2 due to very high demand. On the flight themselves, dogs must be on their leads and cats in their carriers, with a member of staff providing refreshments throughout the flight. I hope that's for the people and the dogs, cats. The launch of the airline is unlikely to be welcomed by the environmental activists, given the much higher impact of private jets per passenger than commercial ones. So there we go.
This sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
From a piloting standpoint, can you imagine a Gulfstream full of 7 hounds and 1 rabbit?
Yeah, 2,200 people have got too much money, if you ask me.
So I'm in a conundrum here, right? Because I fly corporate. There's a lot of our listeners that fly corporate. If it wasn't for those individuals and their net worth and their resources, we wouldn't have jobs. One of the, I'd love to get your take on this, Andy, but one of
you're gonna get it.
One of the things that I always try to reconcile is, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, I know I love flying. I know I love aviation. The corporate world and private flying people with the resources, to do this is sometimes interesting. And we do some pretty silly flights. Sometimes, 80% of them are good, and you're getting them to their families or their business meetings, things like that. And I've seen the graphs where all the economics works on business aviation, especially when you get a company, you get executives that their time is worth so much money that it actually works out to financially beneficial to take private aviation. But at the same time, I got, a good buddy of mine. I had a terrible, not a terrible, but an absurd story where I ended up having to fly a CPAP mask, like, for breathing at night. For breathing,
yeah.
Yeah, I had to fly that from A to B, and that was, probably cost about $5,000 for a $69 CPAP mask because they needed it. And I thought that was my most absurd story until my buddy told me that once he flew, he had no idea. He was told to go to Raleigh, and he was doing a flight up to the DC area somewhere. And when he showed up, instead of passengers, it was just a crock pot. Like, they wanted to get a crock pot of of food to a family dinner in DC. $4,000, $5,000. I mean, he was flying a Citation at the time. And sometimes you just go, "Ay, like, what are we doing here, man?"
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I fly in a very different world to you. I'm all about mass transportation, filling the airplane with 186, 249 people, and going from A to B, dumping them, taking it a load, coming back. Your world's much different to mine, and I get it. It's got its place for, like you say, for people where time is money, and for important things like medical, especially medical. So I've got a friend of mine who works as a doctor. He spends his entire time on very light jets like Mustangs and stuff, jetting back and forwards across the country and into Europe, saving people's lives. And that's important. But for your pets, just bung them in the hold of a BA flight and hope for the best.
Yeah, that's a...
I mean, pets are very important to people. I get that. I've had the emotional connection to pets. I know what it's like. But come on. I would never pay $7,000 to transport my pet across the ocean.
Well, you would do if you're a multi-millionaire, Andy, let's be honest.
But then you wouldn't be doing this, would you?
Well, true, yeah, I suppose. Armando, have you... Obviously, you've been flying corporate stuff now for quite a while. Have you had any pets on board for a flight?
Oh, yeah, all the time. All the time. We have pets... I'd say 20% of the time I have some pet, and sometimes they're huge dogs, right? Like, so one of my clients has got this, he's got to be 70 pounds, some kind of poodle, purebred poodle or something like that. He's a great traveler. Actually, yeah, a lot of my regulars will have their have one German Shepherd, one poodle that are, excuse me. Yeah, and they're great travelers. I mean, they're very well trained. They get up on the airplane. They usually just sit in the back. Sometimes the poodle is his name is Ranger, and it's pretty cool because sometimes you'll be up front flying, and then you'll just feel the wet nose on your elbow or something like that.
This is why I work behind a locked door.
This was, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to pet a dog while you're at altitude. And you got nothing else to do. But yeah, we have a lot of pets.
So moving on to the next story, which doesn't involve pets or wet noses. It involves BA. It's from twitter.com, and it's a discussion on the recent change in social media policies for BA. I'd like to hear you guys points on this, because obviously you're both pilots in the industry. British Airways has refreshed its social media policies, which regulate what and when employees can and can't post online regarding their line of work. While employees of the UK flag carrier previously had a responsible degree of freedom on this front, the airline has reminded staff not to post while professionally engaged. What about if they're married? On Wednesday evening, accounts that had previously showcased an insight into the life of the carrier took to social media to explain that their activities would have to change going forward due to the refresh. Captain Dave on Twitter posted, "Unfortunately, due to new published company guidelines, I and my colleagues will no longer be able to post when professionally engaged in our job at BA. So that's the end of my flying posts, photos, videos. Thanks for all the lovely comments over the years." 24 hours later, BA released its own statement on social media saying that we're not stopping colleagues from posting on social media. Quite the opposite. We've simply refreshed our existing guidelines, giving people, our biggest ambassadors, more clarity about what appropriate, e.g. no photos when carrying out safety critical or customer focused tasks. BA explained that we're given our people clarity about what is appropriate and when. For example, when our colleagues are flying an aircraft, they're responsible for the safety of everyone on board. It's not unreasonable to ask them to wait until their break to take photos. Nothing has changed in terms of the actual social media guidelines. We've just provided additional clarity about what is and isn't acceptable. The guidelines ask colleagues not to post social media when they're professionally engaged in a job, e.g. serving customers on board or flying the aircraft. And BA's external social media guidelines recognises the advantages of social media as a means of sharing employees' passion for their work, as well as strengthening the wider BA brand. However, the airline also reminded its workers that certain content may and could have negative impacts. Come on in, guys. You both, obviously, Andy, you work for a large European airline. And, I mean, what are your company's guidelines, if you can tell us?
To be honest, I've got no idea, because I have no interest in it. When I'm at work, and I'm there to do a job. Especially as I work in standards as well. So my job is to maintain the standard that's expected of a professional airline pilot. I don't have time to be taking photos and sticking stuff on social media, because I'd rather just concentrate on the job. Now, I understand why people are getting upset about it, because a picture from a flight deck is a beautiful thing. We get the best views in the world. But everything's got its time and its place, and I can see why a lot of them are, shall I use the word, whinging about it? But to me, it makes perfect sense, especially from BA's side as well, because it can bring them unwanted, what's the word I'm looking for? Unwanted, I can't even think of it. Attention, yeah. That, if somebody's being recorded an approach or something like that, then stuck it on social media, which I've seen happen before, and then people go, well, why aren't you concentrating on your job? I don't know if this is aimed at the pilots as well, because there's a lot of mention there about, don't be doing social media while you're serving the passengers. So I don't know if cabin crew have been taking pictures very inappropriately. I've got no idea. But to me, it's not something that's ever crossed my mind to be taking picture of things and sticking it on social media.
Yeah, I will agree with you on this one. The British Airways updated policy applies to all crew, right? So it includes the cabin crew, not just the pilots.
Cabin crew, engineers, everybody.
Yeah, and I do agree with this. I just recently had a flight with an individual. I was training them in the Pilates, and they wouldn't turn off their phone. And I actually stopped the airplane. I did a full stop landing, and I asked them to turn their phone off because we're all addicted to it, right? We're addicted to our phones. You see it while people are driving. And now you have the Apple Watch or smart watch that now just is a repeater of all the notifications that you're getting on the phone. So if you have anything on, right? And keep in mind, sometimes I record flights too. I record them for our fellow podcast hosts, and sometimes I record them for our Patreon supporters. They're never passenger carrying flights. It's always an empty flight. But I don't know that necessarily excuses anything, because you still know it's there, and now that's another smidge of bandwidth that is being taken off your mind, because something's recording. That whether the GoPro's going, your phone is going off, or even just as soon as you get to 3,000 feet, your phone picks up a little bit of cell phone service. Your Apple Watch goes off, and you start getting notifications. If you're trying to hand fly an approach and your left wrist or your right wrist is going bzz, 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 it's pulling penguins off the iceberg, and it's just not. I kind of agree with all airlines having a policy now. Here in the U.S., it's actually in the Code of Federal Regulations. It's in the FARs that, from basically block out to block in, your phone, your personal electronic device needs to be, on standby or off. And I kind of extend that to creating content while airborne. I think there's probably other things. Now, I'm not a long haul guy. I don't know, if you're sitting there for 6 or 8 hours at a time, is there nothing else to do, but doing this? But, I'm one of those people that keeps their head in the game the whole time.
I will occasionally take pictures at work if I am doing it to produce training material for work. So if I've been asked to produce something, I need some images of certain pages of an ECAM system or the FMGC or something like that. I'll do it in the cruise, but of course then I don't go publishing it all over social media and stuff. But that's literally it. And with actual mobile phone use, I mean, I must be old school. I'm only 37, but like I literally, on a turnaround, I'll text my wife and go, "How's everything at home?" I won't even look at my phone. I'll do everything else before I go have a quick look. She's replied, or she hasn't because she's busy with work, and then I'm off to the next sector. That's it. But you do see a lot of first officers these days, the new generation who are just literally on their phone constantly because that's how they've grown up.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Sturman in the chat room just saying that he loves the GoPro footage that pilots put on, obviously on YouTube, the point of view stuff they do, but it is all edited and posted after the flight. He loves those, and for me too. When there are quite a few pilots I follow on Instagram and on YouTube who do those kind of same the video that Armando shot with me when I was flying with him in the States, a year ago. Those sort of the back camera footage of the flight deck, and you can hear the stuff that's going on, and they are really interesting. And I think they, in some way, help to possibly with the youngsters who are watching these videos, make the younger people may want to pursue a career in aviation. What do you think?
They do lead you open to criticism as well. I saw a video the other day of an approach into somewhere. It was gin clear. The air looked pretty still. It was an Airbus, and the guy was doing this with a stick. It was everywhere. He was hitting the stops and everything. And I was like, that's just massive over-controlling for the camera. And then the second he landed, he just let go of the stick. The nose just smashed onto the runway. Didn't even go for the tiller. It was just hands off everything. I was just like, why would you put that on social media to look cool?
I will record a lot of flights for training purposes. So one of the operators that I work for has what's called a pilot development program. So we take young pilots, put them in the right seat of a single pilot airplane like the Pilatus. And that's a pretty big leap when you go from a Cessna 172 or even a Seneca or something like that in your training to a turbine airplane that's doing 300 knots, and you're in the flight levels going into Class B airports. That's a pretty big leap. So a lot of times I will record a flight. I don't post it anywhere. It's literally just a...
Exactly. That's different, Armando. You're recording that, and it's not interfering with what you're doing, and you're using that for training. I mean, we do that in the Sims now. You can record the Sims from behind and from the front to see where your eyes are, and that's useful because that's not interfering with the operation of the aircraft. And you're not posting it out there for likes and all that sort of stuff, which is what a lot of the motivation's for as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, Andy. Also, that unwanted attention, unwanted publicity. Coming from the military, we were very strict on what you post in your capacity as a military member, right? And you had to ensure that anything that you do on social media is not a reflection of the military branch that you work for. And I think it's entirely within a company's purview to say we want to control the messaging. That's I don't think that's entirely off the reservation for BA or any other company to say, hey, we're going to designate some people to be our brand ambassadors, but we don't want a bunch of loose content out there that isn't sort of endorsed by the company. So I agree with this whole thing.
Can you see in the chat room, Andy, the comment from Alex?
I've seen a video. At 100 feet on approach, chopping the power. Wow, okay, that was a heavy landing. Oh, that sends shivers down my spine even thinking about doing that. There's a lot of people agreeing with us in there as well, the whole likes. It is, I mean, I will stop talking about it in a second because we've got plenty more things to get through. But it seems to be a sort of an addiction to the social media likes. It's like, the buzz of drinking or smoking or whatever, that's the new thing now. Getting the likes, that's what they need. There we go. I've had my bit. I haven't even started about politics yet,
No, that's coming up later.
That's for the post show.
Blimey.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of social media, so this next story is a family of 5 flying around the world in a tiny airplane. Spending over a year flying around the world with your family in a tiny airplane is something that most people could either imagine or only imagine or maybe dread. But this is a reality for the Porters from Canada who are currently about halfway through their 14-month circumnavigation of the world. Ian Porter, who has been a private pilot for around 4 decades, and his wife Michelle, their daughters Samantha, Sydney, who also happen to be qualified pilots, and their son Christopher, set off from Vancouver in June of 2022 and have been basically traveling every day since. The family, who are taking the low and slow approach to the trip, have already visited around 20 countries, including the U.S., Brazil, Bolivia, Paraguay, Argentina, Panama, Costa Rica, and Honduras, have flown around 25,000 nautical miles. According to the dad, flying a single-engine airplane around the world is a dream that's probably somewhere in the back of the mind of all pilots. But he began to look into the prospect a little bit more seriously a couple years ago after going on a few long-distance fundraising trips. The real estate developer, who had always longed to spend more time traveling with his family, as most of us do, saw this window of opportunity with Samantha planning to take a year off from university and Sydney graduating from high school. Meanwhile, their son Christopher had just experienced a dry run of remote schooling during the pandemic, so they knew that this was a viable option for him, while his wife Michelle had been a full-time homemaker for a number of years. So, convinced that it was pretty much now or never, Ian quickly set about to convince the rest of the family to take the plunge into this trip. Once everybody was on board with the idea, he found a suitable aircraft for this expedition. He said that he wanted to do the entire trip under VFR, and they didn't see a need to file or seek approval for flight plans, which I wonder how that's going for them, traveling between country to country. They also factored into the choice that the most aircraft used around the world are larger and require routes that are planned in advance or approved by air traffic controllers. So basically, they just wanted an airplane that could take 5 people, some survival gear, a reasonable amount of luggage. Eventually, they came across the Gibbs Aero GA8 Airvan. This is a modern aircraft manufactured in Australia. It is a piston engine aircraft. It looks like a mini Cessna Caravan. And there was one available for sale just pretty nearby their home to Vancouver. They bought the aircraft. They nicknamed it Moose for about $500,000, and the rest is history. Ian describes their single-engine aircraft, which can carry up to 8 people and is capable of doing 125 knots for up to 5 hours, as the sport utility vehicle of the sky. Now, they are doing this for a charitable cause. They aim to raise $1 million for SOS Children's Villages, which is an international charity focused on supporting children in over 130 countries that do not have parental care or are families at risk. And they'll plan on doing that while posting to social media during the course of this trip. And you can go to their website at 5inthesky, the number 5inthesky.com, and I'm sure they are posting all the links to their charitable causes on this.
Isn't that nice?
I need to get into real estate. There's plenty of money there, isn't there?
Yeah, well, it goes back to the previous topic.
Yeah, gotta have plenty of money to do that. Wow, £500,000 aeroplane. Ooh.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's got a cost. I wouldn't even know how to put it. You know, we've had some guests on the show that have done around the world trips. I don't know that we've ever talked about the cost of doing a trip like this. Most of them were sponsored. I can only imagine that you're talking a couple $100,000 between fuel, fees, maintenance, lodging.
Easily.
Yeah.
But it's good that they raise $1 million. That's brilliant. The cost must be phenomenal, though. But it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, their pictures are amazing.
Yeah,
Carlos
they
has
are
some pictures.
I don't think I could have spent that much time in a aircraft with my parents and my sister, but never mind.
Well, listen, this won't surprise you, but I've actually flown the GA8 because Civil Air Patrol has a bunch of them. It's not the most comfortable aircraft.
Is there
It's
anything you haven't flown?
Some of my dream aircraft, like I want to fly warbirds. I want to be that old guy, the white stash. I want to be Captain Jeff, basically,
Hey.
just retired and like going around from commemorative Air Force unit to unit and just fly like T6s and A26 Invaders and F6 Hellcats and just all these old radial engines.
You need the white scarf as well with the wire in, so the sort of the scarf is just sitting there, you know.
You mean like my Halloween costume for the last 10 years?
You will look good with that little white moustache. You will.
Right? Well, I can't grow it up here, so I might as well put it on my face.
Anyway, clean shaven Armando. Moving swiftly on to the next story, Andy, and your views on this one.
Okay then, so Air Canada Rouge Airbus A321 mayday due to multiple successive fault messages. So this was an Airbus A321 operated by Air Canada Rouge, which was flying from Cozumel in Mexico to its home base at Toronto Pearson on the 23rd of Jan, when issues arose with various systems. The issues were so severe that the crew was forced to declare mayday and divert to Tampa, Florida. According to the Av Herald, the flight, which was registered Charlie Golf Hotel, Quebec, India, was performing flight RV 1997 from Cozumel to Toronto. We know that when the incident occurred. Cruising at flight level 370 across the Gulf of Mexico and some 250 miles north of the departure field, the flight crew began to receive multiple successive fault messages on the aircraft's ECAM, which is Electronic Centralized Aircraft Monitoring System. The ECAM is used to monitor and display engine and aircraft system information to the pilots. Messages alerted the crew of issues with the aircraft's ELAC, which is the elevator and aileron computer, stabilizer, autopilot, and yellow hydraulic system. As a result of these issues, the aircraft's fly-by-wire system reverted from normal law to alternate law. As a pilot here explains, when met with certain failure conditions, the aircraft control laws degrade to alternate law. In alternate law, most of the envelope protections are lost except for the load factor protection. Yeah, that's right. The flight crew then declared mayday and diverted to Tampa, and during the flight's approach towards the diversion airport, the aircraft's fly-by-wire further degraded to direct law, a setting where all the protections are lost, and the pilot is required to trim the aircraft manually. Now, just to add a bit there, if you're in alternate law and you put the gear down, it will go to direct law anyway, so that's what it could be talking about. Despite the changes, the aircraft systems and controls, the pilots landed the aircraft safely approximately 50 minutes after the issue surfaced. Apparently, this aircraft was delivered to Air Canada in January 2019 as a second-hand airframe, with an age of 8.5 years at the time of the article's publication, so it's not that old. It began flying in Russia, and then it flew for the now-defunct Iceland budget airline WOW. And as of November 2022, it had flown 20,000 hours and 5,652 cycles, so it's not that much, really. So yeah, an interesting one.
I don't know anything about laws and direct laws, and I have like 4 cables that are linked to the yoke that are labeled direct law, and they go all the way back to the tail.
You're in direct law all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so normal law, obviously you get protections, high bank, high pitch, low pitch, overspeed, and you get the low speed protection as well. In alternate law, they all sort of disappear a bit, and normally you need 2 major failures for it to drop into alternate law. And then normally, apart from a few failures, I won't get massively technical, in alternate law, once the second you put the gear down, the aircraft reverts to direct law, so then you've got to manually trim it. It's just like a Cessna 172 or 737 or anything like that. Now, looking at these failures, it's in the ELAC, stabilizer, autopilot, and yellow hydraulic system. To be fair, this is probably a fault somewhere in the avionics system somewhere, because the chances of having all of those failures at once is very, 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 very small. So it looks like something's gone wrong somewhere within the computers.
So something like this, you just do like a massive Control-Alt-Delete, like let the airplane go dark and it comes back. Where do you start troubleshooting?
You'd have to troubleshoot. You can do an all Control-Delete on the ground, but unfortunately not in the air. So you'd have multiple checklists on the ECAM to run through. You'd have to keep going through each one. Once you've cleared them out and done all the actions, then you get the summary page at the end, which is the best page on the Airbus, because it tells you what extra things you need to do for an approach and landing, and then it lists all the systems that are in op. So it's a great little summary of this is what's not working, here's the extra bit you need to do for this approach.
Give me an example of something that would be extra that you would have to consider on an approach.
Adding speed to the V approach speed, or V ref as you call it on anything else.
Just for a lack of protection.
Yeah, it's just saying it might as well. Certain failures will say you need to use flap 3 for this instead of flap full. But if you look through the expanded checklist in the FCOM, it'll give you all those details as well. It's just a great little page when you, especially when you're doing your brief, you can just press bring the summary page up, and it will show you all those bits and pieces that you can talk about. And now with the FS Plus software, which has replaced the main part of the QRH, you can just plug each one of the failures in, and it will take all of them into account and give you the speed you need to use, what flap setting you need to use, and it'll tell you how much runway you're going to need to land in the current conditions. But this does look like really something has gone catastrophically wrong somewhere in the avionics bay to have that many failures, because it's so rare to have that many issues at once.
Perhaps a Windows update, Andy.
Yeah, well, I think this thing still uses DOS or something like that.
Linux.
Yeah,
I know. We have Pip. Pip is in the chat room today. This is our QRH. It's pretty hefty. It's got some performance stuff in there, but that's literally it. These are your equivalent of ECAM lights. This is for the Hawker.
The Hawker.
800.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we're still very much a who's flying the airplane, who's reading the checklist. If we get any kind of warnings or cautions.
Our current QRH looks like that, but in a couple of weeks' time, it's just been chopped down to an A5 with about 7 or 8 pages in it.
Wow.
Because the software on the EFB is so good now, it will do everything for you.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, something has gone wrong downstairs underneath them here. That would be my first thought when all of those things come up at once.
Sounds like a great Friday night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron P in the chat room says, "I wonder if liquid seeped into the avionics bay."
Yeah, could have. There used to be a lot of issues with that. Do you remember when the 350 first came out as well? They had to put that plastic tray over the centre pedestal if they wanted to use pass any drinks around.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's a sensitive aeroplane when it comes to liquid.
Yeah, I think most are.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So Armando,
we'll get to that. We'll get to that in the caption. This.
Oh yeah. The military special caption this week. Armando, you've got the last story in the folder this week.
Yeah, Carlos, I love you to death, but I had to replace the source of this story because the one that you sent had probably the worst Google translation of a story. So this is actually from simpleflying.com. A Lion Air Boeing 737 collided with the terminal. So this 737 collided with the terminal building at Mopa International Airport in South Papua in Indonesia. This incident occurred on Thursday, January 26th on a flight bound for Jayapura, and no injuries were reported on board. The 737-900 was scheduled to depart for the provincial capital of Jayapura on flight 767 shortly after 9 o'clock. As the plane was departing stand number 5 heading towards runway 34, the winglet struck. They called it a jet bridge. It wasn't actually a jet bridge. It was actually a stairway on the airport terminal building. Footage posted by passengers showed the plane continuing for a moment before returning to the terminal area. Now, the terminal area and the aircraft both sustained significant structural damage. Now, the airport is one of these, and Carlos has got the pictures. I think the terminal took most of the damage there. But it's one of the easternmost airports in the country, serves as a main gateway to several tourist destinations, most notable which is the Wasir National Park. Now, the aircraft had about 117 adult passengers, 4 children, 1 toddler, 7 crew members at the time of the incident, and some footage that made its way to Twitter showed the aircraft continuing down the taxiway. It was actually a runway before eventually returning to a different stand, and the affected passengers were given the option of transferring to another flight or just receiving a refund. So I actually took a look at the airport on Google Earth. Stand 5 just happens to be the only one that has a stairway like that. The entire terminal is just blocked off. So you would walk out at what you would consider ground level to the stands. There's about 8 stands at this airport. Stand 5 is the one closest to the terminal, has a stairway that you saw in the pictures there. And I can see this happening where if they were off the line, as they basically did a 180-degree U-turn to turn from facing the terminal, turn it around to get facing away from the terminal and out to the taxiway. There's also not a lot of taxiways on this airport. It's basically just a ramp with 2 entrances that go directly to the runway. So I could see this happening, and you can see that on the pictures that Carlos is showing there, that the wingtip probably just crushed inwards, towards the body of the fuselage of the aircraft, and really the terminal took most of the damage. I saw a bunch of social media that the pilots were taking the runway and how could they take off like this? That none of that ever happened. The only way to get back to the terminal is to go out on the runway and then taxi in the other entrance. So that's why the videos showed them on a runway with the crinkled up winglet. Now, that all being said, pretty remote area. I don't know. Is this just a, take the old one off, bolt the new one on type thing? It'll buff out moment?
It's a lot of work to swap one of those. I remember when we started to get sharklets, as they called on the Airbus fitted, to swap one takes a long time. But I'm not sure. We can fly without... we can fly without wing fences. Oh, so you remember the old... the flat end that we used to have, that some Airbus still have, and then the later ones, the sharklets. I know we can fly with one wing fence missing. I'm not sure about a sharklet, though, because that's quite a big difference on each side. So I don't know if Boeing have the same option.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Plus, there was a military story this week that I didn't include. The Navy was celebrating the fact that they were able to replace a couple panels on an aircraft carrier, something that would normally be done on a ground-based facility. And it's kind of the same thing, right? So you have a remote outstation airport. Now you got to fly the parts in. You got to figure out how to get there. You got to fly a team in, the right engineers, the right experience, the right tools to go out to one of your outstations. And then there's no hangar facilities, so you're doing out in the elements. That'll be interesting.
Now, I know Lee Davies is in the chat room. He was just talking earlier in there about the Airliners live feed that I tuned into last Sunday up at Manchester. We're going to get those guys on the show soon, so hopefully, fingers crossed. And did
they go to Manchester a lot?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh dear.
But they were featuring us last week. I was watching that, and they had the Jet 2 757s, which they're still using, the 75s there. And I tell you what, there was Dreamliners, there was 330s flying out of there last Sunday. But out of all those aircraft, the one that looked and sounded the best was that 757 when it was spooling the engines up, without question.
You can't, because obviously I fly out of Manchester, and first thing in the morning, even when it's around the other side of the terminal, you know the sound of an RB211. You can't miss it.
It is,
for sure.
It is one hell of a sound, definitely. So, Armando, it's time for military news. So, right. I shall hand things over to you.
Well, lucky for you, Carlos, we've got no media, but let's go ahead and hit the button.
What's up, Bogies 13550, Angel 16, heading 340. Okay. 108 Bogies.
Oh, I love this. Dirk has just initiated the GMOC, the Gray Mug Owners Club. By the way, I'll take this as an opportunity to push our mugs, sorry, I guess we do have 2 versions. Not our only mug, but this is our favorite mug, which is got Mac the Osprey on it, Plain Talking UK, and is I only listen for the gray stuff. with our website. Anyways, as I always say, you don't just have to put coffee or tea in there. It's good for other things too. So in our tech update, this is something that we got really excited about just a few months ago on the show. We talked about the MC-130J, Special Operations C-130s, going on floats. The initial test flight of this amphibious version of an MC-130J Special Operations transport was anticipated to take place this year. Those plans have changed. According to Air Force spokesperson from Air Force Special Operations Command, they said, we were initially aiming to conduct an operation capability demonstration in 2023. However, for a variety of reasons, at this time, they do not have the capability demonstration scheduled. Those reasons vary from funding challenges to recent reprioritization of capabilities. The spokesperson did not elaborate on the reasons that she cited for the change in plans for the aircraft, dubbed the MC-130J Commando to amphibious capability, or, man, we were ahead of the game, the MAC. Now, thedrive.com did ask for some clarification. They said they would update the story if they get a response, but for whatever reason, yet another setback for a program that has now seen its goal line shift to the right for a second time. That starts making me wonder, are we ever going to actually see the MC-130J on floats? We'd love to, right? I mean, the DC-3 on floats, we talked about that one. There's been some great aircraft in history that have been put on floats. Anyway, kind of speaking of aircraft on floats, the second part of my tech update for the week is that the Pentagon has now selected 2 teams to further develop their designs for a full-scale demonstrator called the Liberty Lifter X plane. Aurora Flight Sciences, who's been around for a long, long time, and this company, General Atomics, who has been working with the Department of Defense for many, 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 many years, are pursuing 2 very different designs for phase 1 of the project. As a DARPA, or Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency press release distributed this week shows, the Liberty Lifter X plane project aims to deliver a long-range, low-cost X-plane using a wing-in-ground effect, ecranoplan-like concept. The artwork that Carlos has just posted on there, released by DARPA, shows that the Aurora Flight Sciences concept, which had not been seen before, resembled more of a traditional flying boat of the Clipper style. The concept featured a single hull, high wing, 8 turboprops for propulsion. It also looks similar to a Boeing Phantom Works Pelican wing in ground effect design concept from about, 20 years ago or something like that. In a separate release published by Aurora, the company notes that its concept will employ a robust and adaptive control system designed to meet the challenge of operations to and from sea surface and at low altitude around waves and obstacles, using innovative technologies to avoid operational limitations. Blah, 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 blah. Lots of big words joined together. There is a YouTube video that you can actually go check out on DARPA. Literally, DARPA has a channel. And they're talking about this Liberty Lifter. This may be the reason that C-130 concept just got put on hold, because they may be shifting focus to sort of a clean sheet concept like we're seeing here on Liberty. So kind of these 2 stories go together. Obviously, this is in response to the geopolitical situation in the Pacific, where we're going to need some air mobility out to remote locations. Carlos has a great video there, right? This is the DARPA video, but none of this is new. The Russians have come up with concepts like this. We came up with concepts like this years ago. It's been around. You can see some of these aircraft actually down in Lakeland Airport. They have one of these at a museum, which is basically a hover plane that just is in ground effect over the water. But
sorry, Armando, just further down that article, has somebody put a picture there of the spruce goose?
Well, I mean, yeah, it goes back that far, where the spruce goose was the iconic seaplane But all the Pan Am Clippers, if you watch any of the documentaries on Pan Am, they were the ones that really, kind of pioneered this whole Clipper concept to go out and land on water and visit all these ports. And of course, the military has just kind of followed along.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, though, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Look at airplanes. I don't know. I think they could have probably gotten the C-130 on floats quicker than developing one of these from scratch. But at the same time, nowadays with the technology that we have, maybe the capabilities were so much more with a clean sheet design that they would, it's more advantageous to just scrap the whole, put the C-130 on floats project.
It is a very interesting looking thing, I will say. Moving swiftly on to an aircraft that's been around for a few years and is bound to be around for another few years. It's the F-16, and this comes to us from the Politico.com website. And the Pentagon push to send F-16s to Ukraine picks up steam. A contingent of military officials is quietly pushing the Pentagon to approve sending F-16 fighter jets to the Ukraine to help the country defend itself from Russian missile and drone attacks, according to 3 people with knowledge of the discussions. Ukraine has kept American-made F-16s on its weapons wish list since the Russian invasion last year, but Washington and Kiev have viewed artillery, armour and ground-based air defence systems as more urgent needs as Ukraine seeks to protect civilian infrastructure and claw back ground occupied by Russian forces. As the Ukraine prepares to launch a new offensive to retake territory in the spring, the campaign inside the Defence Department for fighter jets is gaining momentum, according to the Department of Defence official and 2 other people involved in discussions. Those people, along with others interviewed for the story, asked not to be named in order to discuss internal matters. Spurred on in part by rapid approval of tanks and Patriot air defence systems, which not long ago were off limits for export to Ukraine, there is renewed optimism that Kiev and the US jets could be lined up next. They said that you don't suppose a senior Department of Defence official about the F-16 speaking on condition of anonymity, say that after a beer, to discuss a sensitive debate. The person stressed that there has been no final decision. However, the Ukraine has yet to declare that the fighter jets are its top priority. The official stressed, noting that the Pentagon is focused on sending Kiev the capabilities it needs for the immediate fight. But fighter jets may be moving to the top spot soon, and Kiev has renewed its request for modern fighters in recent days, with a top advisor to the country's defence minister telling media outlets that the officials will push for jets from the US and European countries.
Yeah, and you saw this week that the tank deal has finally gone through.
Yeah, what's the name of the tank?
It was German Panzers and the
Panzers, that's
Abrams.
it. Yeah,
Panzers and Abrams, and the Abrams are on their way. So the next natural evolution of all of this, right? They've received rockets, the multiple rocket launch system, and the limitation. Because I've had a couple friends ask me why. Why hasn't this happened? Is the limitation training? The F-16 has been sold to partner nations for decades and decades and decades, but you can't just take even a seasoned fighter pilot, somebody coming from a MiG-29, MiG-21, something like that. It's still going to take them 6 months to get trained up.
Yeah, and who's going to train them?
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? Like, so where are they going to go? Are they going to go to Poland? Are they going to go to Germany to get trained up? Then
Who's going to maintain the aircraft?
Exactly, right. And that's actually a problem with the tanks, because I know here the news cycle again goes so quick that people are saying, "Wow, why didn't we send these American tanks earlier?" Well, they run on like jet engines. You need jet fuel. You need specialized training to run them. You need spare parts that we may just not have, or they may just not have. Like, the whole process just takes months and months of training and a logistical supply chain. It's not as easy as just send them over and launch them into the skies and wish for the best type thing.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that all being said, if they get them, it's a pretty significant, as we used to say, a force multiplier, because now you have F-16s going up against some old and new Russian aircraft, and it could turn out to be a interesting air superiority fight.
Yeah.
Andy, you've got
Yes.
the next one.
I have, yes. Following on the jolly theme. One dead and one missing after fighter jet crashes in Greece. The body of the co-pilot of an F-4 Phantom fighter jet, I still can't believe they're flying, of the Hellenic Air Force that crashed on Monday morning in the Ionian Sea off of western Greece has been recovered. The pilot is still missing as a major search and rescue operation is currently underway to locate and rescue him. According to the preliminary reports, the crew of the F-4 Phantom fighter jet asked the control tower to use the automatic abandonment system. It is not clear whether it managed to evacuate. The details surrounding the crash remain unclear. The wreckage of the jet was found near the crash site in the Ionian Sea. The jet was performing a training flight and was flying in a pair. The official announcement of the General Air Staff is as follows. On Monday, January 30th, 2023 at 10:30 a.m., a two-seater F-4 Phantom II aircraft of the 330th Squadron of the 117th Fighter Wing was performing a training flight, crashed in the sea area 25 nautical miles south of Androvidas Airport, which resulting in the fatal wounding of the co-pilot, Lieutenant Marios Michael Torotsikas, 29 years old, and investigations continued for the Captain F. Stathanios. I'm sorry, mate, I can't say his surname. 31 years old. National Defence Minister Nikos Panagotopoulos. Have you done this on purpose today, Carlos? Giving me all of the terrible
this
names.
This is Armando. This is.
Yeah, Carlos, come on. And break, Carlos.
I apologise to anybody of any Greek listeners out there. My terrible English. I'm from the north. I can't speak properly anyway. Sorry, they announced a 3-day period of mourning in the country's armed forces on Monday. While the search for the captain continues, we express our sadness and grief at the loss of the co-pilot after the fighter jet crash during a training activity. Our thoughts are with the family of the flying officer, to whom we express our sympathies and sincere condolences. So yeah, it just carries on here that it was out on a training flight and sadly something has gone wrong. The Phantom was in production from 1958 to 1981 with a total of 5,195 aircraft built, making it the most produced American supersonic military aircraft in history and cemented its position as an iconic combat aircraft of the Cold War. That's a very sad story that that's happened.
Yeah, and I only put this in here because the only operators of the F-4 I think are Greece and Iran.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think Turkey had some, South Korea had some. Are they flying too much? I don't know that they are.
I'm just looking now. In limited service, produced up until 1981, introduced into service in 1961, first flew in 1958. Yeah,
it's been around for a while. I mean, nowadays, nothing on Captain Nick there, but every time I see one of these flying, it's almost a treat, right? Where you see, it's like seeing a warbird flying.
There's a few airfields that I fly into that have them based there still and have the arrestor cables on the runway. Yeah. And when you see them take off at night, you can't see a lot except the lovely, just the fire from the tailpipe. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful airplane. It really is.
Yeah.
I just saw one on a stick down in Lackland Air Force Base, and you just can't help but turn around it and admire how ugly it is.
And the noise is phenomenal as well.
Yeah. Ah, man, doing their part for the environment. That 2-mile trail of black smoke.
That's the B-52s, isn't it?
Do you know what? Pay your £7,100 to take your pet. These are doing a lot more damage to the world.
Fair point. I'd rather fly a F4 for an hour.
Now I'll pay the $7,000. It'll be cheaper.
Blimey.
Well, we got one last military story. It's almost debatable if this is even a military story, but Carlos and I were actually talking about this. This has been all over the news here in the U.S. Apparently there's a balloon There's a Chinese surveillance balloon over the United States right now. The U.S. military, the U.S. Air Force, has scrambled 2 F-22 Raptors from Nellis Air Force Base in response to this incident. A senior defense official said that the U.S. had considered shooting the balloon down over the state of Montana. They did say afterwards that they just couldn't buy down the risk enough to feel comfortable to recommend and giving the order to shoot it down in the last couple days. Now, this balloon does remain over the U.S. Although
I thought the Chinese said it's not a balloon. It's a what is it? A civilian weather balloon that's gone off course. Isn't that
I remember that line. I have a T-shirt that says that. It was a T-shirt to survive captivity. We were just a weather balloon. I don't know what you're talking about, sir.
That's what they said about UFOs as well, wasn't it? It's just a weather balloon.
For decades, they said, "Oh, it's just weather balloons." And now, 2 weeks ago on the show, we just talked about how the Department of Defense has opened up an official inquiry as to these unmanned, unexplained phenomena. Anyway,
Sorry, I digress.
Yeah. Well, no, we digressed in a great direction because that's pretty much what it is. Carlos and I were talking about this. This balloon.
I know Sturman's really interested in your views on this, Armando.
Yeah, I mean, kind of right. Again, I'm not in the military anymore, but the capability that the Chinese satellites have right now is so immense. I'm not entirely sure what it is that they would be trying to get from a sensor attached to a balloon with some solar panels. I think this is just a bit of a test to see, Carlos, you were asking me about air defense zones and shouldn't we have shot it down. I guarantee you this was tracked. I guarantee you that a balloon showing up over the U.S. from China didn't come as a surprise. It would have taken days for it to get over here. It would have been tracked by something. I think they're just making a conscious decision to say, we're not going to shoot it down because we don't want to hurt anybody on the ground. And what are they actually getting from it is probably nothing because their satellites are way more capable than something strapped to a balloon like this. I don't know what this is all about, but I think it's just
surely they have satellites that are much more capable than
100%.
Some 2-bit bit of equipment that they've attached to a balloon that they've let loose several days ago. It must have taken a while to blow around.
Armando,
yeah,
we've actually managed to get a picture of that Chinese balloon. Here we go.
Oh, I can't wait.
I'll just load that up. Here we go.
I feel like this is either legit or next week's caption this.
There we go.
Oh, don't start me on these things.
There we go.
Yeah, these are like a real danger to aircraft.
to the world, to the environment, to aircraft, to wildlife, to everything. Anybody watching this, don't send up lanterns.
Thank you. No matter what holiday.
That is my public service announcement.
Public service.
I don't know. Unless you guys have any questions on this whole balloon thing, it is all over the news here in the U.S. And
I've got loads. I want to know why it was allowed to come into the U.S. airspace, because you guys watch everything down to ants, so you must have known it was there.
Yeah, but if you're going to shoot it down, it's a risk versus reward. So if you're going to shoot it down, now are you giving them a reason to say you just shot down one of our things as an escalation thing, or did we just surprise them by going, a whole lot of nothing, we're just going to let it fly over into Canada?
It's a funny old one, isn't it?
It's the cartoons, the Spy versus Spy cartoons.
Yeah. Oh, God. You're dating yourself there, yeah.
Yeah, despite this young-looking face, I do. All my pop references end at 1955. Anyway, so that's the end of the military, except for...
hold on, it might have been this one, Armando.
Yeah. No comment on that one. We're just going to move wrong.
Move on.
Definitely shoot that one down.
Yeah, move along to the caption this. Carlos, I'm actually going to let you describe the photo.
Why would you let me describe this photo? I'm the one who just picks them each week. I know.
You were the one that found it. You describe the photo, and then we'll just jump right into it.
Right, so the photo for this week's Caption This, let me just bring back my camera. Here we go. The caption of this photo, which I posted on our Facebook page this week, was quite a good one I found this week. It's involving a very well-known aircraft that we had here. We had here in the UK that was very good at its job, which for some reason I think we gave all of ours to the Spanish, didn't we, Andy? I'm pretty sure we gave all our Harriers to the Spanish.
Oh, now you've said what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, we gave the design away at the Americans as well, didn't we?
Yeah, I know. But this particular picture is involving a very small, what would you say, stream here. Whether that's what you call those in the US, Armando, I'm not sure. A stream? What do we call?
A ditch.
A ditch. Okay, a ditch.
Have you got the picture, Carlos? So I can see
I'll just hold on. I'll just grab the picture. Hold on. Here we go. For the benefit of those of you watching in YouTube world, there we go.
Oh, lovely.
And it's a Royal Navy Harrier, possibly upset by Jonathan Warner taking pictures of him a lot, and he decided to go for a drink instead. We've had some comments, haven't we? I'll let you kick off with the first one from Stephen, Armando.
All right, my friend Stephen Ivy says, "One ditch only, please." I think that's from Hunt for Red October, right? One ping only, Vasily. One ping only.
Good reference. Classic film.
John says, Royal Navy Bog Snorkeling Team win the best fancy dress at this year's International Bog Snorkeling Regatta held in Llangwith, Wales.
The next one's from Jake Castle. This is the instructor. Every landing you walk away from is a good landing. Any landing you can swim away from is... Student says, hang on, that doesn't sound right.
Go on in, Dirk, with the next one, Armando.
Yeah, Dirk says, the Royal Navy now following the U.S. Navy example of operating F-35s submarine mode.
I like that one.
Mike is saying, when the sonar equipment fails, the Fleet Air Arm takes a more direct approach to anti-submarine patrols.
I like it.
Alan White says, I've heard of a Sea Harrier, but not a Stream Harrier.
David says, Siri, I said I needed a drink, not land in the drink.
Bob says, stealth sub fails. First test.
James Graves Brown says, the new Royal Navy Flying Submarine Limited Edition.
And we've got a couple of these ones from the Instagram page, haven't we?
From Instagram, 3550 Rebel says, Britain's new U-plane, guaranteed to fly under the radar.
Now, I'm going to give this one to Andy to do in his poshest RAF voice. From Nick.
So this is from, Nick. Now, look here, Private. Just because it says Royal Navy on the tail doesn't mean it will ruddy well float. Is that good enough?
Very good.
Only you could have done it that well.
Oh, no. Have we got anything from the chat room? Let's have a look in the chat room.
We've always got comments in the chat room. We've got, let's see, Micah says, a Harrier Brooklands. Brook, because it's a brook. Lands.
Oh.
And get it? Sturman says, extra quick water-cooled engine. Let's see. Alex Robinson says, RAF Luton looks to replace the HMS Sinky. Richard Adams says, the Navy didn't quite get their pilot streaming process right. Lee Davies says, where's Captain Sully when you need him? Although that airplane looked pretty intact. Let's see. Hobby Time says, the Royal Navy's top secret subnautical Harrier breaks cover. This is a good one from James. He says, sink rate too high. That might be a winner.
Very good.
Anyways, there you go. Hey, babe. Say hello to everybody.
Hey, babe. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Megan.
Hello.
The boss is in. The boss is in the house.
Yep. Let's see. Give me one quick second here. Oh, well. There we go. Now she can hear you.
Oh, there we go. Hi.
I don't know if she wants to hear us.
No, the boss is there, keeping an eye on Armando, you see. But thanks for everyone for all your comments this week on the Caption This. Don't forget, next Wednesday, as long as I don't forget, there'll be another one posted on our Facebook page, and also we're going to start getting these on our Instagram page as well more often, so you can comment on there if you follow us. If you're not a Facebook person, which I know a lot of people are binning off the Facebook and sticking to other forms of social media, we'll pop that on Instagram as well for you to comment on next Wednesday. So keep your eyes on our social medias to see when what the next picture will be. I think perhaps next week we should get Armando to choose a picture to go on there. What do you reckon?
Deal.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Shoot, I think I probably got some pictures in our own family flying adventures that would qualify for a Caption This.
Uh-oh.
Oh, blimey. Family friendly, I hope.
Always.
Of course, always.
You both said that in unison then. That was very good.
When it comes
lovely.
to airplanes, it's all family friendly.
Oh, I thought you were going to say when it comes to airplanes, we're totally in line. We're always in unison.
Right.
So while you're there, Megan, special job for you. Can you, for the benefit of our listeners, in case they don't know where to find us on social media, can you let our listeners know where we are on social media?
I can. You can find Plain Talking UK on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just search for Plain Talking UK. Oh, and WhatsApp. We have a WhatsApp number, +44 757 22 49166. Email. We have podcast at plaintalkinguk.com and the website www.plaintalkinguk.com.
I feel like we're taking it back in time. So if you want to send us a letter or a telegram, you can just send it to Bungie 1094.
And don't forget, and the next bit as well, don't forget, Megan, the YouTube channel bit.
I've got this.
Yep.
No. Shh. Why not subscribe to our YouTube channel? You'll get notifications when we go live, and you can help shape the conversation of the show by joining us in the chat room, like all of the lovely folks have here today. There's a few that I am very excited to see because they're excited to see me too. Go to youtube.com and search for Plain Talking UK. And why not, while you're there, become a Patreon member.
Yeah, which we talked about.
And donate. Oh, you have?
Smash that bell icon.
Smash that bell. I'm a Patreon member, despite the fact that Armando's here doing the podcast. I also support it financially. So you should.
You do. Very kind as well. And what about if you're going to do your shopping? Where should people go if they're doing their shopping on a particular...
Amazon, of course. There is an Amazon link. I don't know what that is, but there is one.
It's on the web page.
Gotcha.
And we always promise we can't see, wink, wink, what you buy.
And also, don't forget as well, what have we got on our website shop for sale for our listeners, Megan? What have we got on there? Well,
I think we have some of these, right?
The only thing that matters.
Okay, we've got a few different versions of these, yeah?
Yeah, we have.
Is there a non-grey one?
There is a non-grey one, yes.
Good.
There is a PTUK non-grey one. And also,
but nobody buys them. Everybody just buys the military ones.
And there's also T-shirts as well, which I think, Megan, you've got your own T-shirt.
I do have a T-shirt, yes, yeah. I do. I mean, it's in the wash now because it's my everyday wear.
That's exactly where mine is as well. Yes, I've been wearing it all day.
Yeah.
Oh, right, Andy. Honestly,
it's also great as a nightgown. It's great to wear to the gym.
Painting.
Yep.
Cleaning the car.
Oh dear.
I'm kidding. Mine is perfectly intact, no paint on it.
Good. That's what I like to hear. Because a certain someone that we shan't mention their name done their tiling in their one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, ruined it. Pip. Anyway,
we'll just have to get another.
We will. Yes, very true. So that is about all we've got time for on this week's show, episode 443 of the show. Big thanks to Andy for joining us on the show this week. Thanks, Andy. It's been lovely to have you on, as always.
Oh, pleasure, as always.
Great. And hopefully, Andy, I think we're going to steal you again in a few weeks' time, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, I've given up trying to claim my fee from you these days. So yeah, you can have us whenever now.
Ah, blind. So, and you'll be back in a few weeks' time with us, because we're nevless for a couple of weeks. So Andy's very kindly going to step in the week after next and join us for the show. So thanks for that, Andy. But no, it's been great to have you on as always, and a foot of knowledge of everything Airbus. So thank you, Andy.
Oh, apparently so, yes. No, it's great fun, as always. Nice to see you all. Nice to see everybody in the chat room as well. I'll be back in a few weeks.
And a big thanks as well to Megan for joining us for the last part of the show and doing our social media links. Thanks, Megan. You've done it very well.
No problem.
We should pre-record you doing that.
To do it or anything.
What we need to do, we need to pre-record you saying all those links, and we can just drop that in at the end of the show, and it'll...
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Let's make this happen.
Memorized.
Let's make this happen. Yeah.
Okay.
And thanks to Armando as well for joining me tonight. Thanks for Armando for joining me and giving us the military news this week. I know Sturman enjoyed that, and obviously Mr. Warner enjoyed that as well, as all the listeners. And don't forget, those grey mugs are available on the store. If you've not got yourself one yet, those military grey mugs are available on our website, along with our normal PTUK mugs as well, which you can purchase on there, along with T-shirts as well, which we still have got T-shirts as well. If you want one of those as well, we can ship those out to you. Although at the minute we are having issues here in the UK with sending stuff to the States. Our very lovely Royal Mail are having some kind of difficulty of sending anything bigger than an A4 piece of paper to the US. So once that gets sorted out, we'll be sending stuff out to you guys over in the US. But that's it for episode 443 of the show. I'm going to hand things over to Armando to close the show, because I need to press buttons and do things that Matt would normally do when he's here. But I'll be back next week, and hopefully Armando will be back next week as well, and we'll try and grab a guest for next week. So Armando, over to you to close the show.
Well, most importantly, like a fine chimichurri or a bechamel sauce, Andy always elevates the show. He's the only reason I listen. Thank you, Andy, for being here.
Same.
Thank you to all our Patreon supporters. Thank you to everyone that supports the show. All the listeners, have a great week. Stay safe. If you're going flying, send us some pictures. We'll throw it up there next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.